Welcome to our webinar, Raising Funds in 2013, Challenges and Opportunities. Hi, I'm Paul Martin, President of Advocacy Media. It's a pleasure to have you join us today. We're looking forward to the speakers today, and frankly, really want to appreciate you spending time with us. Let's take a look at a little bit about advocacy, and then we'll talk about our specific topics for today. Advocacy in your ministry, simply put, we help grow funding for Christian broadcasters, Christian schools, Bible colleges, missions agencies, nonprofit organizations that carry the gospel. That's what we're about here at Advocacy. Today we're going to be talking about raising funds in 2013, the challenges and opportunities ahead. Simply put, we believe if your vision for your nonprofit organization is bigger than your budget, you ought to give us a call. Our objective is to help get you funding to be able to fuel your vision. Thanks so much for coming today. I do want to talk about our presenters as we get into the subject matter. First, we'll be hearing from Randy Bronkema today. Randy's long experience in development pays great dividends for his clients. Frankly, whether it be a small Christian school, whether it be a Bible college, a university, Christian formatted radio station, a ministry that is looking to grow in any regards, Randy helps groom leaders, helps attract funds, and be able to enable the staff that they can go forward and execute that vision. Jerry Grimes is with us today, too. You'll enjoy Jerry. He has an amazing knack for understanding what people want to see in donor communication, whether it be online, in a letter, or whether it be in Twitter or Facebook. Jerry understands that, but he's broader than that because Jerry's experience in managing Christian formatted radio stations, helping development at large universities, as well as running a social services concern, Jerry understands the issues that nonprofit executives face in raising money. And that's what he comes to in our presentation today. I want to introduce you as well to our newest team member, Will Stevens. Will has recently graduated with his master's in Christian Stewardship from Southwestern Theological Seminary. Will tell you that there is a great deal of scriptural truth that we do not deploy when we're looking at fundraising, and there's a great part of discipleship we leave behind. I'm very excited about Will being on board. His experience on Wall Street with Morgan Stanley will pay great dividends for you today as we start working through a number of the topics. In fact, there's a topic I wanted to ask Will about right at the top of our call today, and that is about the economy. Many nonprofit leaders are buying into that notion that the economy is a formidable obstacle right now to fundraising. Will, what's your take on this?
Well, thanks, Paul. Great getting a question about the economy. I mean, the old joke about economists is they've successfully predicted 16 of the past 9 recessions. So their ability to predict is difficult. So certainly we don't know what's going to happen going forward. What we do know is that the economic malaise, whatever you want to call it, these past few years has done a lot of damage to a lot of folks these past years and impacted many ministries. So the economic reality may be somewhat grim, but here's what we need to know. Interestingly, Cygnus Research, which does one of the largest surveys of donors, their recent survey suggests that some 80% of donors intend to give either at the same level or at a higher level this year than they did last year. So the giving is going to keep on going despite the tough economy. So the lesson for us there is that donors don't give based only what's in their pocketbook, but donors support your ministry based on what's in their heart. So that's what we need to know. Secondly, what do we need to believe about the economy and your ministry? And Proverbs 22:2 says, "The rich and the poor eat together. The Lord is the maker of them all." So what we take away from that is that there are good times, there are bad times, and the economy will produce those and generate those for us. And there's a lot of uncertainty, but one thing that is certain is that the Lord is in control. So our faith tells us that God's purposes don't change with the economy or with the political climate. God's purposes remain the same. Therefore, we need to keep focused on God's purposes for us in our ministries. Why we exist as a ministry, how we can effectively serve the Lord through our work, and then how we can communicate our mission and enlist the support of others in God's work. I mean, we are told to live in and work in community. So no matter what the economy is doing, people still need to be fed, children need to be cared for, and everyone needs to hear the gospel. So your ministry is vital. So thirdly, what can we do? What is there to do? And our great challenge is, how can we as ministry leaders connect and communicate the passion we have for the work we do to others? And there are three things I think that we can focus on here. One is research our donors. The more we understand what moves our donors, what stirs their hearts, the better we can connect with them and enlist them to help us in doing God's work. Secondly, polish our branding. Make sure that our website, all our mail and letters, all our communications echo the passion we have for what we're doing, our calling and our purpose in ministry. And lastly, sharpen our messaging. Every time we communicate through fundraising, it's an opportunity for us to build and strengthen relationships. And it's relationships that come together to help transform our ministry into a community. So the bottom line, this is a question about economics, is that the economy doesn't matter. What really matters is our faithfulness in committing to do God's work and enlisting others in the cause. And fundraising can really help us in building relationships.
Will, thank you very much. That's great. God is the provider, and that's the bottom line, regardless of where the economy goes. Thanks so much. Now, one of the challenges when I speak with nonprofit executives is the challenge of time and where to put their energy, where to put their resources. And a lot of times, the challenge that I hear about is, well, we've tried that before, and it took me a little bit. Tell me, how can we help them? What can we tell them when they say that to us?
Well, we tell them all the time, maybe the way you tried it before didn't work because you didn't stick with it long enough, or maybe what you tried the last time didn't work because you didn't go about it the right way. And we hear this a lot from organizations that have struggled with fundraising. Maybe they've been up and down in the amount of money that they've been able to raise. They've tried lots of different things. They've had staff turnover, and that has created its own set of problems. And what we really need to tell folks is there really is nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes had that about right. You just need to understand that there are lots of really good ideas out there. They are often based on sound principles, the best ones are. And we need to take a look at doing some of the things that other folks are doing. I would say the best approach to trying an old idea again is to freshen your approach to it and what you're doing. Maybe try go at it again with a different set of parameters. Look at it a different way. Maybe it didn't work quite well the last time because things weren't just set up the right way. Another thing you might want to try is to learn from others. There could be other people in your sector of the nonprofit world in other places of the country that have done the same thing, and maybe they've done it successfully. I'm finding as I talk to nonprofits that a lot of folks just aren't into networking. And I think it's good to go to conferences, to be on web calls like this, make new friends around the country, and ask them what they're doing. And if you find somebody that's doing an idea that you've tried and failed, try to find out what the difference was. How did they approach it? It's usually not that a great idea just doesn't work in our market or in our location or for our nonprofit, but it may work someplace else. We often think that, but that's usually not the case. It's usually more like there are other factors involved that we need to take a closer look at. The other thing I would say is maybe you didn't stick with it long enough. Good ideas take time and persistence, and you have to apply everything you're doing in your development plan with one critical attribute, and that is consistency. Consistency is so important because if we have to apply strategy, measure it, learn from the measurement, and then go forward and apply strategy again. And that is how we move forward in the process of development. So the very fact that you've tried lots of things and some of them haven't worked may indicate that you have a consistency problem. The other thing is, I've mentioned this earlier in answering this question, Paul, but the best ideas are the ones that are rooted in sound principles from God's Word. The most important one is that this isn't about getting money from people. This is about inviting people to participate in God's work and going through the process of development by building a series of really strong relationships. And if you're doing it some other way, that is a big problem that you might want to take a look at. So don't just look at new ideas that you get maybe at a conference or reading articles or networking, like I mentioned earlier, or surfing the web. You look at the principles behind them. Why do the ideas work? Once you understand that, you'll be able to apply them to your situation. And finally, and this is critical, the most important way you can implement anything in the world of development and make sure that it's going to be guaranteed for success is to take a look at the messaging. How we instruct our staff, our volunteers, our board members, our friends that are helping us, how we communicate ideas to donors is critical. And a lot of times the communication is just not clear. It's just not precise, and it leaves a lot of confusion. And that is a real big reason why a lot of people fail in the area of development when they go out and try some new idea.
Jerry, thank you very much. That's outstanding looking at this list. One thing I do want to mention to anybody viewing the call, please, if you have any questions about any of these arenas, please feel free to email or call any one of the consultants you see on the screen. That's why we got the email addresses there. That's why we got the phone numbers. These gentlemen want to be able to help you in the way that you're doing things. And if you've got a good question, they're more than happy to answer. In fact, they're happy to answer even questions that may not be so good in your own estimation. So this is really good. Now, I do want to bring up something here. There's a lot of times where the leaders that I speak with are having to manage their priorities, and frankly, they can't get all the work done. They're looking at the ministry that they have, and they say that fundraising is important, but first we've got to go do something. Randy, what would you say to them when they say they really want to do the real work of ministry before they embark on fundraising?
Well, thank you, Paul. Fundraising is a very important part of your work of the ministry. And we have to take a look at what our Father is saying to us. There are two very important things he would like to see from our ministries and even from our churches. Number one, he wants to see unity. And what better way, and one of the ways we create unity is when we're sharing our resources for a common purpose, for a common vision. It is so important that those resources create that unity. And second of all, our Father is very aware, and it's very important to him that we create stewards. Stewards who understand their resources and how they are helping our ministries to become better and stronger in fulfilling their passion and purpose. And that's part of the reason why fundraising is so important to your ministry. There is really no perfect time to do fundraising. The perfect time, I guess, would be now, to begin to start going out there and developing those relationships and moving things forward, I believe are crucial. So don't wait for the perfect time. In other words, no excuses. We need to move forward. Next, we need to trust in the Lord. It is not our job to worry about necessarily who's going to give the money, but it is our responsibility to share the needs and to make the requests and to pray and to ask God to bless these efforts. And he will. And we need to trust in the Lord. Fundraising is a driver of relationships. The more relationships you have as a ministry, the stronger you're going to be. So get out there and begin to start developing those relationships and developing those people. And you can go forward even if you really don't have a development plan. Certainly call us here at Advocacy. We would love to help you in terms of that development plan. But the key is to move forward, to make it your priority, and to move forward. But let's take a look at this also biblically. A priority. Was it a priority for Nehemiah? Nehemiah was approached by his brother, Hanani, who said to him, listen, our nation is in ruins, and our city is in ruins. The first thing Nehemiah did is he wept, he cried, he fasted, and he prayed. And theologians tell us for about 6 months he did this. And then he did something very bold. And it was one of his priorities after he sought the Lord. He fundraised. He asked the king for a major gift, one of the largest in world history. And the king granted him his request of wood in his forests and masonry from his stone mills. That was such a priority to get the whole project going. The other project was David in the temple. Who gave the first gift? It was David. David made it his top priority. And let me encourage you, all of you who are listening, you may be the leader of your organization, or you may be one of the followers in your organizations. By the way, we're all leaders, we're all influencers in some way. But let me ask you, have you made your ministry the priority? Are you giving back to your ministry? You need to be the example for everyone else. And it needs to start with you as the ministry leader or working in the ministry to make it a priority. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Randy. You know, a follow-up question to this that normally comes up is about the NPO leader, the nonprofit leader, who's being pulled in so many different directions. And they basically say, I'm just a little too busy, to get on the work of fundraising. Now, Will, what would you say to that person?
I know one of the things I wouldn't want to do as a nonprofit leader is to walk into my staff meeting and say, I've just spoken to a consultant, and he says we need to do more fundraising, so everybody get busy. That's the last thing a staff wants to hear. So the question is, how do we find time for fundraising? And I think the first thing is what Randy has touched on so well. It's about setting priorities for your ministry. That if we treat fundraising and development as a stepchild of the ministry, it's short-sighted and counterproductive. Clearly, fundraising and development are a part of ministry. One other aspect is that fundraising is a corporate responsibility. It's not the job of one person or department where you simply say, okay, Joe, you're in charge of fundraising now, go get them. It's really a corporate responsibility. The ministry leadership, the staff, and board members, everyone has to pull their own weight and do their part in driving fundraising, both through personal commitment and through their professional efforts. So the effort of fundraising is going to be spread among everyone who's involved in the work of ministry. And third, in the practical sense, how do you do more work on fundraising with the same amount of time and the same resources? Well, I have one word for that, and it's systems. That systems will allow you to organize all the different tasks and all the work you need to do to build a good development plan and have a solid fundraising campaign. And which systems am I talking about? First, a marketing system. The marketing system organizes your messaging, how you communicate your vision and your passion, and the branding of your ministry. Second, you need a communication system. That organizes and systematizes every contact that your team makes with donors and prospective supporters. So it's all planned out by calendar, by messaging, and by target audience. And third, overall, you need a development system. The development system coordinates all of these things, your marketing plan, your communications plan, and adds in other important aspects like getting the proper education and training for your staff, doing more work with your board to get them fired up about fundraising, and also having the proper tools to record the data and to track the results of your fundraising activities. So all these different systems come in to allow people to work in an organized fashion and allows the leadership to really analyze results and to make tweaks and move forward. So with the proper systems, there's plenty of time to invest in fundraising with the same number of people and the same number of work hours in the day. So the payoff with investing in systems is both the growth and the continued success of your ministry.
That's great. And the systems aren't necessarily computer systems, so they may include, they're just processes that that work, right?
I put it this way, being an ex-football coach, that if you had 22 great athletes and threw them out on the field with a football and said, go get them, the results would not be as good as if you had a game plan and a playbook and then practices to go through and kind of practice with the team. So systems organize the passion of your ministry and direct them in the proper direction.
That's great. Thanks, Will. Well, I know a number of the nonprofit executives I speak with also have a little bit of concern about going out and making the actual calls. And frankly, at dinner sometime, I've actually heard some say, I really don't want to do it, so I make certain that I'm busy doing other things. And Jerry, one of the things underneath that is they keep hearing the word no. And so what do you tell a leader of a nonprofit who feels as if they're only going to hear no if they go out and talk to people about money?
First thing I have to tell them is to take a deep breath and really think about what they're saying. Because as far as I am concerned, or as far as I know in research and everything that I've ever learned, there's never been a living human being who was struck down dead from hearing the word no. No is not fatal. It is not going to kill you. And if you really think about it, it probably shouldn't even really hurt your feelings. And here's why. Because the word no, as simple as it may sound to us, and we all think we know what it means, actually can mean several different things. No, I put it this way in a blog, and I'd be happy to send it to anybody listening right now who wants a copy of it. Just get a hold of me after the call. The word no actually has many faces. And one of those no's could be, no, not now. You've asked me for a gift. I understand that, but I just can't do it right now. That's the most common face of no. Or no, not this way. They may want to, it's somebody that might be perfectly willing to give you $1,200, $100 over 12 months, but they're not willing to write you a check for $1,200. And I know that's kind of a smaller gift amount, but I just throw that out there for some of the smaller organizations that are listening. Just change the numbers if you're looking at bigger numbers. But that is true. Some people want to give over time. Some people want to give over all at once. Some people might want to give you stock or bonds or something instead of cash. So definitely no can mean not that way, not this way. There are lots of other examples of what no can mean. It could mean no, unfortunately, it can mean no, not to you. A donor or a prospect may feel that there's somebody else in the organization that they're closer to that they would like to talk about their finances with, and you haven't quite earned the right to talk to them. So there may be somebody else in your organization they feel more comfortable with, and you shouldn't take that personally. Just connect them with that individual, get the gift, and move on, and cultivate other people and other relationships. So no has many faces. The next thing is we ought to sit down and really find out why someone is saying no. It could be that you've asked too soon in the relationship. At Advocacy, you hear that we're development consultants, we're fundraising experts. Instantly people think that we're high-pressure guys and that we're going to really teach you how to put the screws to people and arm twist them and manipulate them into giving. Nothing could be further from the truth. We believe in a biblical stewardship model. We're very committed to it. And the process that we teach you is a lot more like harvesting when the fruit is ripe. We believe in, if you have an apple tree and you go up to it and it's not the time for apples yet and it's the green apples all over it and you pull real hard on the tree, you might be able to get an apple off, but you're going to damage the tree and it's never going to produce, that branch is never going to produce apples maybe ever again, or at least for a long time. Same thing is true with people. If you wait until it's time to harvest and ask, after you've ripened the relationship, then the giving sort of takes care of itself. And that's the process that we teach. And so finding out why someone is saying no, it could be that very answer. It could be a lot of other reasons. No often leads to yes. That's another point. Sometimes we find that people tell everybody who asks them the first time no. A lot of foundations, when you apply for grants, maybe you've run into that. You've applied for a grant, you get told no, somebody calls you or you do some follow-up and they say, well, we tell everybody no the first time, apply again next time. and you do, and you get the grant. Well, that's because a lot of organizations, a lot of major donors have a sort of set policy. They tell everybody no the first time that they're asked. That's just how they do it. They want to test your tenacity and your ability to persevere. Also, I would say check your reality versus your perception. This goes back to the very first thing I said. Are you overreacting to the whole idea of no? So what if you go out and 17 or 20 people tell you no before you get a yes? There's really no harm in that. It doesn't mean you're a bad fundraiser. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that things aren't working. It just means that those people aren't ready to give yet, and they may have one of those other many faces of no as their reason why, but you're just going to go ahead and keep asking, and you'll learn to move on and be productive with your time and with your perseverance. And the last thing I would say is to remember this, this is ministry. So we're not out just to ask people money. We're out to listen to them and find out how God has wired them, understand their hearts, what their place in the kingdom is, what they're called to. And if you're really doing your job right, you may find people who aren't really ready to give to your organization, but you can help them find an organization that they are ready to give to. And if you do that, then on down the road, God will reward you, because the supply of God's money is endless. He owns it all. And these folks that we're talking to are just stewards. And so we just have to connect with the right ones and build the right relationship and raise money God's way. Paul?
Great words, Jerry. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. You know, one of the things that I had a NPO exec talk with me about last week, he said, I go out and do a lot more fundraising, but the problem I run into is I don't really feel like I get board support. I mean, my board just won't help me. And Randy, you work with a lot of boards. You do a lot of board retreats. You have a chance to help the board and the nonprofit get together and see a common vision and work forward together. What do you have to say about this when a nonprofit says, my board just really doesn't put any effort into fundraising?
Oh boy, I understand that. Understand that of being in the fundraising business for over 20 years now. And one of the things, you really need to seek help when dealing with a board, and to seek counseling, to seek a consultant. And the reason for it is you're never a prophet in your own home. And I can attest to that personally. As a vice president of advancement, I would give a passionate speech in terms of we need to accomplish these 3 things and whatever, and it would be passed by and a little bit of conversation and people would move on. We would hire a consultant, and he or she would go in front of the board and say the exact same things, and everybody was inspired and fired up. And I would go, what is going on here? You just sometimes are never a prophet in your own home. And you got to understand that. And it's okay to seek some counsel on that and some help with that to move it forward. Now, how do you engage a board? We have to understand what are the primary purposes of a board. Now, certainly boards have what I call secondary missions, such as hiring and firing presidents and executive directors and general managers, etc. I understand that. But the primary reasons we have boards is for 2 things. Number 1, to protect your mission, protect your purpose. It is the primary responsibility of a board. The secondary primary responsibility of a board is to make sure your vision is coming true. Now, when Jerry talked about no's, he was so correct. Listen, we're inviting people to be a part of our mission and vision. That's what we're doing. We're inviting them to be a part of our cause and to move it forward. And if you are passionate about your cause, why won't you invite your board? And why won't you invite others to be a part of that? It just makes good sense. And the board needs to be the primary mover of that vision and helping you in any way they can. Now, board giving policies. I think there is no room for compromise here. I've even heard people come to me, well, most of my board are pastors and they don't have a lot of resources. Here's the deal, gang. If you're not willing to give at least $5 to this ministry, please don't be a part of our board. Okay? please don't be a part of our board. Everybody can give something, and it needs to be mandatory that all board members give you something. And lastly, a board is all about leadership and passion. Listen, if your board is not passionate about your mission and about your vision, then let's work together to graciously let them go. Because your mission and your passion have to be worth fighting for and worth caring about and worth getting out there and telling the community, because it is so important that your mission and vision be accomplished for the glory of Jesus Christ. Thanks, Paul.
Wow, Randy, thank you very much. That was great, because oftentimes the board becomes, in many managers' minds, an impediment, but not really, because we've got to be successful with or without a board, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Very good. Now we touched on this one earlier, that some folks believe that fundraising really isn't a ministry, but earlier we said, well, it really is. And frankly, they say, people like George Muller didn't have to ask. Randy, I want to ask you a little bit about that. What do you say to these people?
George Muller was a great man, wasn't he, Paul?
Yeah.
He really accomplished some great and wonderful things for the kingdom. And he really was a great example to us. But we sometimes use him not from a historical, not accurate. George really went out and talked to a lot of people. He shared with them the needs and where he was going with the ministry. Now, he didn't actually ask people for resources. That is true. But he certainly shared the needs, and he certainly was sharing with people and certainly inviting them to be a part of the vision in terms of the needs that he shared. He also was a prayer warrior. That is so true. He asked God continually to bless his ministry and to meet the needs. But he certainly shared those needs. But we need to understand, as we read scripture such as 2 Corinthians 8 and 9, that asking is very biblical. We need to understand that. Asking people to be a part of your mission and vision is a biblical cause. And sharing the needs and the resource needs that you have is a very biblical thing. Again, it goes back to creating that unity within the body and creating those resources that can allow your vision to come true. Ministry and fundraising, it's all about changing hearts. Listen, everyone, we have two ways in which we can raise money. We can, number one, we can manipulate them. And what I mean by manipulation is if I give $100 to your ministry and you promise me an iPhone 5 for that $100, that's a way of a manipulation. And by the way, if you offer that, please let me know, because I will give your ministry $100. But there's another way in which we all should be raising money. And this is where George Muller shined. Inspiration. People are hungry for inspiration. And we have, through the power of the Holy Spirit, through our mission and vision, the ability to inspire people to think beyond themselves and to think about that unity together and what we can accomplish together for the glory of Jesus Christ. And I think he was one of the examples we look to for that. And he was a great fundraiser. And because of that inspiration that he gave and sharing it so passionately to individuals and organizations wherever he went. Thanks, Paul.
Wow, that's great, Randy. I appreciate it a lot, because at the end of this, and I think basically as I can see it, ministry and fundraising, you're starting from the heart. You're not starting tactically, and that's where manipulation could come in, is if you started with the tactic rather than working at the heart. This is exciting because there's so much good that you're talking about here. Jerry, there was a situation that I spoke with a fellow 2 weeks ago, and he said, why should I spend more time on the phone, because no one's going to return my phone calls anyway, and I've got to leave them on voicemail. I'm not going to, you could just tell the guy was afraid to ask. How do we encourage this guy?
Well, I think admitting that you're afraid to ask is a huge first step, because a lot of people in the development world labor under the delusion that they are really working hard raising money. They have lots of meetings, they write lots of things, they have lots of events, and they might even go out and meet with lots of people, but they really never do get around to asking. And we've talked a lot today about how important relationship building is, and the big difference between just, making new friends and building relationships and development is that development is an intentional process of relationship building. And when we build a relationship with someone, it's a lot like looking across a big canyon or a chasm, and we say, how are we going to get across there? Well, the first thing we have to do is build a bridge. And that relationship becomes the bridge that we use to cross to the other side. But there's definitely, after that's done, there's definitely a point when we get to the other side where the donor is, where we're going to ask. And I think admitting that you have this problem is the first step, because I've seen a lot of development people spin their wheels because they just don't like that moment when they're going to sit down in front of someone and ask them for their donation. Maybe look at it a different way. Don't focus on the ask, focus on the relationship first, as I've said, and then maybe get some help. A lot of times the confidence is shot when we start to make appointments. We just find that we can't really get the job done. We can't fill up the calendar fast enough. We can set aside a day to get out there and meet with folks, but we're just not getting appointments built and not getting our time done. So get an assistant in the office, maybe a volunteer, somebody who's really good on the phone and enjoys talking to people. Give them your calendar that you want to fill up and have them call and make those appointments for you. It positions you as a leader. When I get a phone call from somebody's assistant and they say, hey, so-and-so would like to set up a meeting with you, it communicates to me that this person might be worth my time without even saying it. It's a subtle thing, but it works. And it would get you out in the field so that the appointment setting isn't a barrier for you. And then I would also say, check your messaging and your approach. If you're focusing entirely on the asking, and when that moment comes and you get the sweaty palms and the dry throat, you're taking the wrong approach. Just check your spirit in this and take a step back and say, what have I really done to understand this person? Who are they in Jesus Christ? What are their gifts? What are their passions? Do I really understand who they are in the community, what they're like with their family, what their preferences are? And all of those things could make a great way for you to check your approach. And then your messaging. When you're asking someone, you are inviting them to enjoy the benefits of joining God in the work that He is doing through your ministry. So you're extending an invitation, and that should always be your approach. It's not so much that you're going to trick them into anything or cajole them into anything. That's all the way of the world. The Christian stewardship method is to build a relationship and then invite people to join God in His work that He's doing through His ministry. And the last thing I would say is build your confidence by going forth and thanking people. Gratitude is always welcome. I have an old friend who says that an attitude of gratitude produces altitude, and it's absolutely true. Look back through the last year. January is a good time to do this. Who are the most faithful donors to your cause? Who are the people that you really need to get out there and celebrate? Make a list. Go see them first. Thank them. Take them a gift. Do nothing of the kind that relates to asking. Just express gratitude. After you've done 5 or 6 of those kinds of appointments, you'll really understand how much fun it is to be out in front of people and enjoy building relationships. It'll give you a new confidence, and then you can start building some additional relationships to fund your ministry in 2013. Paul?
Wow, Jerry, that was fantastic. Thanks for those action items, too. And I really got to tell you, that last one is key. Gratitude is always welcomed. And frankly, waking with a thankful heart does change the world. I want to tell you, we've only had a chance to talk about 8 questions so far. And in the coming weeks, we're going to drill down on a few other ideas that are going deeper. For instance, next week we'll be discussing defining your ministry's why, where all fundraising begins. We'll also be talking the week after about transforming your ministry into a community of ongoing support. You might want to circle that date, because wouldn't it be great if you knew you were going forth and there were people supporting you because of the work you were doing? Let's show, we're going to be showing a way to do that. Turning your board leadership into champions of your ministry. We're going to be talking a lot more on the subject that Randy just covered the surface of in this call. Everything you ought to know about your donors. We'll drill down a little bit on the research. What are some things that we ought to know before we address our donors? 5 keys to fundraising success in your ministry's long-term growth. You're going to like this one. It boils down to a very actionable plan. And then driving your ministry's success, 3 principles of fundraising. This is kind of the capper. This is where we launch forward, the catapult on what we're going to do with this webinar series. I really would appreciate if you're able to join us. Please do register at advocacy.com under our events section. I think you'll enjoy it. Once again, if you found anything that you'd like to follow up with additional conversations with Randy, with Jerry, or with Will, please contact them at these addresses or these phone numbers. They'd love to hear from you. We appreciate your time. Look forward to our next call together.